Today I become the chief scout for hire in Football Manager. Kind of. I simulated a Christmas day unemployed to see what teams needed my services. And I'm going to pick two teams from two separate leagues at Christmas to see who isn't doing really well or who is on the cusp of something and maybe need a player to rejuvenate or spark their season into life. And hopefully that player has a big impact on the rest of their season. The Premier League has a few candidates looking at the league table that I found rather interesting. Brentford down in 18th place being one, still with Thomas Frank in charge. However, what can I realistically do with just 7 million? But looking back on the league table, Brentford share the same points with two other teams in Crystal Palace and Brighton. Crystal Palace, still managed by Patrick Vieira, only have less than £1 million in their budget. But Brighton, on the other hand, they have £70 million that we can bring players in for. So I think that's the route we go down. But what about the French league? Let's go to the opposite and pick a team closer to the top. Although Marseille are down in 14th place, and that is very interesting. Lyon are in 8th place and have £11 million to play around with. But I'm going with Lille, who are in a position below in 9th and have £19 million left. How this is going to work then is I'm going to take a look at the two sides, what tactic they are using, where I think they need to strengthen their side and hopefully bring in a player. I'll scout around, see who I think fits their tactic best, and hopefully we can kind of find a player that wants to go to that club and fits the budget. Then I'll add myself as manager of each club momentarily to obviously make sure these players are actually obtainable by these clubs and want to sign for them. Then we can go back to our previous save game file where we aren't manager, and we can add these players for roughly the fee we established using the in-game editor for each of our target clubs. And then of course we can simulate to the end of the season and see how these transfers helped, or don't help. So let's start with Lille, who are rocking a 4-2-3-1. After sorting their players by appearances, I noticed right away long-term injuries. Ismaili, the starting left-back, is out for 2 to 3 months because of a hip injury. But Jose Font, the starting centre-back, is also out of an Achilles injury for 3 to 4 months. Gudmundsson is replacing Ismaili on the left, and although he's not amazing, Lille only have 5 options at centre-back, and 2 are injured, and one of them is being used at right-back. So I'm going on a search for some centre-back options. Stefan de Vrij was my first player to add to the shortlist. His contract is expiring, so he is very cheap, although wages might be high, and he is a quality defender who is a fantastic ball player. And his value is so cheap, I could even pick up another player too. Tormenya from Braga could be a great option too, and only 26 years old, so a good long-term option. Again, he's fantastic on the ball. Registration for Noniu wouldn't also be a problem because he's both Brazilian and Portuguese. Third choice was Ben Sabani from Gladbach, who gives us a different dynamic because he is also very good at left back, and again his contract is about to expire, so he's cheap. My final player on the shortlist is Diakabe at Valencia, who might not have the best technicals, but strong mental attributes and physicals. So let's make ourselves manager of Lille and see who is obtainable. One thing I did not consider before was the board culture, which isn't too important in this case, but it is favoured if players are 23 or younger, which none of the players actually match that, but we need first team replacement for Jose Font's injury. We are not looking for long-term development players right now. So I have my shortlist here of the 4 players we were taking a look at. Now, Steven de Vrij, I think, is going to be the best option for that. He's very similar to Jose Font, but he doesn't have a lot of his negatives like the pace. But he is very expensive. So if we did go and ask his agent for availability, I mean, he's actually interested for one. He would be cheap as well, up to £3.1 million in the January window. But £105k to £135,000 a week is my only concern. And if we take a look at the actual budgets, they don't necessarily have all of that. They would have to kind of turn it around. But what we will do is see if we can offer that amount of money. So we will do that and check to see. But let's take a look at the other options first. Now, Tormenya, I think, is definitely the second best option out of the 4 as well. So it kind of went in order there. He is very good on the ball, as we mentioned, but availability, he is going to be more expensive. He doesn't have too high of a wage, less than 100,000 a week, but 11 to 16 million, so we'll probably be spending around 15 million pounds should we wish to bring him in. Again, we would have to move around the budgets. Now, this guy we kind of know, it's kind of one of those things where, like, on paper, great, yeah, we've got 2 positions that he can fill, but he's not the best option at centre-back, and when Ismaili comes back, we're not going to really need him. I will ask to see how much he is going to be worth. How much is it going to... He doesn't even want to come to us. We'll remove you straight away then, my friend. You're not even in contention for the 3 that we want to sign here. Last but not least, Diakabe. I quite like this guy, and the more and more I look at him, I think this could be the option to go for. Price-wise as well, he's almost there. So, really cheap for price. 6.6 being the maximum. And he's the lowest wage as well, which is quite interesting. So, what we can do then is if I compare him to Steven de Vrij, we can kind of have a look. Now, Diakabe is better aerially and speed, but everything else is in favour of the Dutchman de Vrij. But on attributes, we can see he is superior. So, I actually think we go with de Vrij. We see how much we have left, and then we could possibly go for Diakabe if we're not looking at to replace another position in the team. So I've changed the budget so it suits us a little bit more with that £10 million left, but with 161 in the wage budget. And if we go to shortlist, let's take a look then. Can we possibly get Steven de Vrij on a good deal to begin with and see how much they want for it? 1.6 with 1.5 after. I mean, this is so cheap. It's ridiculous. Yeah, look at that. A maximum of £2.5 million, and it's not even all up front. So we've got a lot of options there. So when it's contract time, de Vrij is very interested, but there is other options that he'd rather have. Obviously, Tottenham probably being one of them. Has he not watched Tottenham recently? We'll take a look, though. So they obviously star player. That's kind of a given, really. If we remove that, would he still be interested? Yes. Negotiate. Good. This is our problem. What is our maximum? 83. Now, he is very patient. Again, we can adjust the budget to see if we can offer more. 87. They are very tight in the budget. This could be our downfall of trying to get Steven de Vrij. We'll give him maximum we possibly can. We'll see if it's possible with a higher clean sheet bonus. It's currently not. Luckily, he has a lot of patience. We can bring him down. There's a little bit more being brought down. 100k, 13,000 less, and it is accepted. So Steven de Vrij, or Stefan de Vrij, I've probably called him that the whole time, is our man. Right, the transfer window's open. Let's move de Vrij to Lille. It was £2.5 million, wasn't it? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's £2.5 million. Everything else we can just leave it at that, and then we just need to change his actual contract. So the deal was for 2026, which ideal. The wage, though, was a little bit different. We are offering him £87,000 a week, which we have selected there. That's exactly what he was on. So that's not bad. That is one transfer done. Over to Brighton then, who find themselves in a relegation scrap playing a 4-2-3-1 with a deep centre midfield. From the positions that they are starting most games, the problem for me is the CDM position with Lallana and possibly a centre back. Lallana is far too weak in the physicals for the Premier League and doesn't play CDM naturally. Centre-back wise, we might also struggle to upgrade Dunk and Veltman, who are better than I thought they were going to be. So possibly a better upgrade on the right, who looks like it's Solly March. Goals-wise, Brighton are struggling, scoring only 12 goals in 16 matches. But defensively, they are mid-table, so I do think attack-wise, they need an upgrade. Shockingly, Brighton are also bottom of the table in pass completion, so that's a statistic we really need to focus on when scouting. So maybe an unrealistic option to start things off, we have Edson Alvarez from Ajax. He might not be interested in moving to Brighton, but he does have something I think this team needs, a player trait of plays short, simple passes. As does Lucas Torreira, formerly of Arsenal, who we could see if they are interested in as well. Could William Carvalho be interested? Another quality player who could be perfect for Brighton with that composure, concentration, and decision making. So we have our 3 players here. Let's see if any of them are actually interested, because I don't think... Here we go. So this is probably what is going to be the problem for us. Players that I picked out which would be amazing for us might not want to come. Definitely, they only just joined the club. It's not really the case. He joined in the summer. Edson Alvarez also not interested. So after a quick look around, what about Monchu? Still a fantastic player, but also very obtainable. Turns out he's not obtainable and he's not interested after just joining in the summer. But I think I found the jackpot with Pablo Rosario, just 25 years old and a quality player with the concentration and player traits to keep hold of the ball more. And most importantly, he's obtainable. I got a deal accepted for £17 million total, which is not bad at all. So before we look at wages, we have around £54 million to find ourselves an attacking midfielder. A cheap option would be Alexis Vega in Mexico, but I think we can find a better suited option. A player I do like is Noah Lang from Club Brugge, but again, could be somebody who's not interested in joining. I also like Lil Abada, but I know he becomes amazing in the game and maybe isn't ready to provide us with goals just yet. And I think I found my number one choice, and that is João Pedro at Watford. £30 million is what they want and can play naturally in 3 positions to give De Zerbi options up front if Evan Ferguson isn't scoring or unavailable. He is also extremely keen to join the club, which is a big plus. So offering a deal for Pablo as a regular starter, this should be an easy one, and it is a 5-year deal and lowering the wage to 68k, which he immediately accepts. Easy. The bid for João Pedro was negotiated to 38 million, but I still think that's good value, and his wages are slightly expensive, but he is a good talent. 90 grand a week on a 4-year deal, that will do. And with both João Pedro and Rosario both transferred into the blue and white of Brighton, let's see how our transfers change things for the two clubs. It's a good sign just a month later that both Rosario and João Pedro have been featuring for Brighton's starting 11. And even a goal from João Pedro in one of his 3 starts so far against Newcastle United. Unfortunately, that's where the positives kind of stop for Brighton. And they're still in 18th place too. And in fact, De Zerbi was ultimately fired, which is not a good start to this experiment. Over to France though, and of course, De Vrij has been playing for Lille. And since joining the club, they have only lost 1 match against Brest.
Ha! Giggity.
Scaloni takes charge at Brighton, who of course was the manager of the World Cup winners in Qatar. And he changes the tactic to a 4-4-2, which means Rosario actually drops out of the starting 11. In France, things aren't looking great though, and Lille are flying through results, keeping 4 clean sheets during February. De Vrij even got on the score sheet from a rebound too, bumping them up into 3rd place, 6 positions higher than when we started. Okay, let's go to the end of the season. Well, not good for Brighton. Relegated with, quite honestly, the most points I've ever seen in the Premier League for quite some time. I think I found out why too. João Pedro has been out for the last 2 months and missed the whole end of the season. And when Scaloni came in, Rosario never started a game after. So I blame him, the World Cup winner, with his shoddy tactics. I'll check anyway. They have moved from 20th place to 13th in the pass completion. Probably nothing to do with Rosario, and of course, don't matter if you get relegated. Right, so when we looked at Lille, they were in 9th place with major injuries. And what a turnaround that is. 3rd place and Champions League football next season. Unfortunately, De Vrij ended the season injured, but he still started 19 games and got a 7.1 average rating. So I'd say that is definitely one success, and one that was probably hampered by the sacking of De Zerbi and a long-term injury. So overall, I quite enjoyed that, and I want to do some more. So let me know down in the comments if you want to see more, and why not check out this video where I set a player at 0 current ability, but with maximum potential. And he's got a funny name too.